Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of API MythBusters Chalk Talks. This is Mike Isbitsky, technical evangelist with Salt Security. Today we'll be talking about the myth of cloud security and what that provides for API security. So if you are, familiar with the world of cloud and you're adopting, services from a cloud service provider like AWS or Microsoft Azure, you no doubt seen some charts similar to these. What I want to really call out though here, there's two things, right? You always kind of see the split, between what does the cloud provider own and what's the customer own, and same right on the Microsoft end. But what's really relevant, in this discussion of APIs, is a few things, right? It's certainly your data. Because that's your APIs you're building are the pathways to data, right? That's how you facilitate data exchange. And APIs are also the way you enable functionality. So they're always going to be your realm of responsibility. What I don't love about the AWS chart here is it doesn't actually spell out the different flavors of cloud compute, whereas Azure does, right? So we see that split between SaaS, PaaS, IaaS, and on-prem, right? Because the reality is you can actually procure some of these cloud services and put them within your data center if you're so inclined. I just want to back out of that. But similar, right, with the Amazon realm of responsibility, data is always your responsibility, right? So that's still relevant in the world of APIs and the accounts and identities also, right? It's very difficult to get IAM roles and principles correct in cloud, right? Many organizations make mistakes. We see countless kind of exposures of cloud storage or S3 buckets in the case of AWS. So really common kind of pitfall. Also relevant here, right? And this is where I actually give Microsoft a good deal of credit, because they do split between the flavors of cloud compute, and it gets kind of a gray area, right? You can see on applications, specifically PaaS, it's split, right? So you really have to be careful which application platform as a service you're operating within. If you are deploying virtual machines in IaaS, well, it's purely your responsibility. But depending on which PaaS service you're using from Azure, you have to be careful, right? So that's one kind of aspect of this. Now, once you've acknowledged that cloud service providers are really in the business of selling you infrastructure capacity, whether that's server resources that are virtualized or containerized to run your applications and workloads, or maybe it's just data storage, something like an S3 bucket, or maybe you're making use of database as a service in cloud. All right, they're in the business of selling you those capabilities to run your infrastructure, just like you did within internal data centers. Typically that's represented as a virtual private cloud VPC or VNet, if you are in the world of Microsoft Azure. But these environments look a lot like your data center environment, and many organizations just kind of lift and shift what they had in their data center and recreate that in the cloud. It is an approach, but cloud does enable other kind of cloud native design patterns where you can really make use of the technologies that the cloud providers use themselves, like containers and Kubernetes and service meshes, but not every organization is doing that. But I would say the majority do have kind of these VPCs and VNets. The capabilities they give you for app layer context, though, are usually limited, right? I'd say all of the cloud service providers, the major ones now, are offering web application firewalls or WAFs. We're actually going to dissect that one a little bit more in a future episode of MythBusters Chalk Talks. The other is API gateways and API management. All of them offer this set of capabilities. If you're in the world of Google, which we didn't have the chart for there, but Apogee is kind of very prominent, and certainly for non-Google Cloud customers, Apogee is a very popular API management platform. Coincidentally, we're also going to dive deeper onto API gateways and API management in a future episode of Chalk Talks. The problem, though, is they are primarily API mediators, so useful for enforcing access control. The problem is they inspect messages, per transaction, so they lack a lot of the context you need to detect most types of API attacks, particularly business logic abuse, right? You have to be looking at API sequences to really understand what is somebody abusing your API, their business logic. The other issue is, depending if you're doing serverless, you may not be mediating API calls, right? Maybe you're using AWS Lambda functions. You don't need to mediate them. So the code's going to execute and terminate. It's very low visibility for a security team to know what's going on with that API. The other problem that is very prominent is unsanctioned PaaS environments. And that this can kind of rear its head with multi-cloud, right? So we talked about Amazon and Azure and Google Cloud here, but maybe you're also using something like Salesforce Cloud and then developing custom apps on the Lightning platform. Well, that's another set of APIs that you might not be mediating. And the other reality is there's also unsanctioned kind of provider managed Kubernetes. This also happens as app teams want to accelerate on app creation and delivery. If IT teams are moving too slow for their liking, they might go out and procure managed Kubernetes resources to deploy their apps, right? Maybe they really want to dig deep in cloud native. They could potentially be mediating that with API gateways and API management or Kubernetes ingresses and service meshes, but that's not a given, right? And you might not have visibility into that. So this is kind of the problem with cloud, because it makes it so easy to spin up new instances and data stores. It's often not on the radar of all IT teams in security. So visibility tends to be low. It actually exacerbates the problem of API security because there's more APIs than you're aware of. So yeah, not really API security. If anything, it's actually adding to the problem of API security and the capabilities cloud providers give you to protect APIs. It's really limited to WAFs and API gateways, which again, we're going to talk about in a future episode.